If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But what you can do is make a few subtle tweaks and changes to improve on what has been a super popular package. That is the story with the new 2025 Yamaha Tenere and Tenere Rally. There we are, new Tenere. So this first one I've jumped on is a stock one, but compared to the old stock one, this has got a much updated suspension system. It was one of the kind of bugbears of the old bike people used to moan about. The stock suspension being a little too basic for what the bike was capable of. And actually what Yamaha's done here is pick that base bike up a little bit just to give it a bit more control, because ultimately this is a bike that likes to be ridden quite hard off-road, so you want that performance from the suspension. So that's what they've said they've done with this one, which is cool, and it's a big step and it's an improvement everybody asked for. So this replaces the base one, and then the Rally replaces the Extreme. The other big changes include the Yamaha chip-controlled throttle, ride-by-wire, and the new TFT dash. The chip-controlled throttle is something I think a lot of people didn't particularly want. People have always loved the analoginess of the old Tenere, and there's a bit of suspicion about what happens when this breaks. Time will tell, but it does give them a chance to prolong the bike's longevity through various Euro emissions updates, which is important. So one of the big things I kind of wanted to see on this was the slow speed balance, because a little bit of an issue I had with the old Tenere, I always found it a little topply at low speed, and the changes to this should have improved it. Now it's going to take a bit more riding in muddy Welsh conditions to really dial that stuff in, but my initial impressions do think it actually feels a bit better than the old bike. I'm not saying it's night and day better yet, but it's an improvement. And the slight trick is that the last one of these I rode was my long-term test Tenere, which had the bars in a position I like them, and a few of those little that is nicely balanced. I do think that's better. How much fuel have we got in it? We are full. It does feel pretty good. A positive step, I'm saying. Find something silly to do to get myself stuck, and then we'll really know. Right, there we are. This was always the point where I started to feel in trouble on the old bike. It's feeling pretty good so far. I like it. They're going, what is that fucking idiot doing down there? Being an idiot is the answer. Nice, evil camber to ride now. This is exactly the sort of place where the old bike kind of had me sweating bricks. It always felt like it was just going to topple on you. But I must admit, I'm feeling pretty good so far, which, considering I've jumped on this straight off a flight, borrowed some weird boots that are 3 sizes too big, which always spoils your day. There's a little bit of that old droppy front end. Now we're in this sand, but I'm pretty impressed with that. I like it. Good Tenere ring. Let's see if we can get back where I'm supposed to be. Now I've pissed everyone off by disappearing into the desert. So one of the subtle but important changes alongside the lower and further forward fuel tank is that it slopes away from you quicker, which lets you put your weight further forward on the seat. And you've got to look at them side by side to really notice it, but what that means is when you're riding sat down, you've got more weight and more confidence in that front tyre. And those little changes, if you're not sure how much difference that makes, go around a gravel car park, sat on the back of your seat, and then do the same on the front of your seat and see how much better it feels with the weight on the tyre. And the bike, this new one, just lets you do that a little bit more. We're not talking a complete revolution, but it's all those little updates that just improve a basically already pretty damn good bike. Just got off of my first spin on that one. There he is. Really impressed as a sort of first impression. It definitely feels like the balance has improved. I don't think it's completely transformed the way the bike balances and feels. It still feels like a Tenere. It just felt a little bit more sure-footed when I was immediately stuck somewhere stupid, which, as you can expect with me, did not take very long at all. But yeah, really impressed so far. And that was just the base model, and the suspension on the base model is definitely an improvement over the old base model, which is, yeah, really good news for those buying the entry-level bike. Today, we're also going to get a chance to ride the Rally, which has got effectively an upgraded version of what was on the Extreme I rode last year. So it's got some DLC-coated forks, it's got a few extra bits on it. So actually, that's the one I'm most excited about. But the base model, definitely improvement. A lot more to play. I want to have a little bit more play with the dash and the controls and the TFT, because although that doesn't really make the riding any better, it's an important bit actually on a long trip. Having that ability to stay in touch with people, easily, check your mileage, easily scroll through menus, change settings. That is a huge part of motorcycles these days, and I think it's important that stuff's easy to use. Whether you like it or not doesn't matter. Whether it's easy to turn on or off, that is important. The final thing that they have improved that I'm really, really happy about, the new dash allows you to turn the ABS off and it remembers your settings. Massive cheer from all Tenere off-road riders in the world at that one. So yeah, early days, but a lot more riding to do. B-Moto are just one of the companies that support us here at Bike World, and they're the people that help us make these videos week in, week out throughout the year. Now, their approach to insurance is kind of to tailor it to you as an individual, which means they can do you motorbike insurance, van insurance, travel cover, and they can tweak the policy to give it the bit that you need that matters most to you. You've got a load of optional extras on there as well, and best of all, when you pick up the phone, the people on the other end tend to know what bikes you're talking about. If you say a Fireblade, they know what a Fireblade is, they'll ask you which year. They do multi-bike discounts, and one of my favourite things is the lack of a mid-term adjustment fee. So if you want to make a change to your policy, change the bike, there's no extra charge. 98% of their customers actually recommend them. I definitely do. I've used them for a long time before the Bike World sponsorship, and I've always been happy. Check out B-Moto on the link below, and you can support the companies that support us here at Bike World. So I've jumped onto the Rally now. So the Rally replaces the Extreme and improves on it. It has, I believe, a different linkage again, but more importantly, a coating on the fork to make it a bit plusher, help with those sort of small bumps, that stuttery situation. And it has the awesome colorways as well, which we love. And again, like the old Extreme, this has got a little bit more travel than the base bike, a little bit taller, a little bit more aggressive, comes with the high front mudguard, also comes with a bigger seat. It's a monstrous seat height on this one, and the big titanium foot pegs as well, which are awesome. If you've ever traveled and ridden abroad, it's amazing. You'd think dirt was just dirt, but every time you travel to a different country, it's crazy how different the grip feels and the terrain feels, and it takes time, and that's where a bike has to look after you. because if it feels nervous and you're still trying to adapt to the terrain, you've got no hope whatsoever. Whereas if it gives you a bit of confidence, and I definitely think the new version of this Tenere, it definitely has that little bit more confidence when you're feeling delicate in the mornings. The GYTR kitted bike that I've been riding with the big airbox and all the extra power, this one does feel very smooth by comparison, but it definitely a little bit calmer. If you're a hooligan, I'd still recommend fitting the cool exhaust. Now the question a lot of people are going to be asking who currently have a Tenere Extreme or a stock Tenere is, should I upgrade? Should I make the change? And I actually do think going to an electronic throttle will make them maybe more reluctant to change, but the benefits on the standard one are clear in the suspension. It's not a no-brainer because the best bike in the world is the one you're riding, but I would consider changing a standard. The difference is less pronounced in this Extreme or the Rally. It is undoubtedly better. Like the new features with the ABS save you having to hack some sort of fuse removal or dongle to make your ABS stay off. The bike is a little bit more balanced, a little bit more forgiving at low speed. The suspension on paper is better. I wouldn't want to commit to that until I'd ridden them back to back on the same conditions. But it is a step forward. But it's not night and day on the Extreme, but a big improvement on the standard model. That said, the paintwork might be reason enough to upgrade, because it does look flipping awesome. The modifications they've done to this bike are, on first look, quite subtle. When you park it next to the old bike, you've got to be a bit of a bike nerd like me to really spot all the details. But the changes have been there to improve the bike, not completely alter it. Don't forget, the Tenere has been hugely popular and is loved by riders the world over. It's kind of probably still for me the standout bike in that trail bike that does touring, as opposed to a road bike that can go off-road category. Sure, the KTM is super aggressive and has that wild KTM backing behind it. Sure, the Ducati Desert X has incredible capability, but the Tenere just seems to have hit a sweet spot with a lot of riders as a bike they're happy and confident to charge off-road on and then ride 4 or 5 hours to get to where they want to ride the next day. This looks like tarmac. Tarmac is good for wheelies! So with a successful formula, what do you do? What do you change on it? Well, Yamaha has taken a little bit of a leaf out the book of previous owners. One of the big things that changed on the base model was the suspension. It got a fair old rap for having basic suspension, and I think that's a reputation that was brought on by the bike being used maybe in a more aggressive way than Yamaha first imagined. When you start doing that, the old bike, the suspension did start to feel a bit basic and struggled to control it. So the base model now has addressed that. It doesn't have the full spec suspension that the Extreme and now the new Rally has, but what they have done is improve what was there, so the bike is now controlled and capable to ride at a decent pace off-road without starting to do crazy things and bucking you out the seat. Probably more fundamentally than the suspension is the change to the tank seat sort of rider front area. The seat's now a little bit lower and raked further forward at the front of it. The seat height's the same, but when you sit on it, you sit further towards the front of the bike. The tank is also lower and further forward, moving more of that weight onto the front tyre, which is Yamaha's way of improving that front end feel and giving you a little bit more confidence at the front of the bike. Now, I've been riding my Tenere Extreme everywhere I can for the last year, and that's probably been my one critique of the bike that stands out, is that kind of front end feel and a little bit of front end nervousness. It's quite a sensitive bike to suspension setup, in that when you change the suspension settings, it does alter how the bike feels. But I've always had that slight awkward feeling in the front. Jumping on the new one today, it's not massively transformed, but it's definitely improved it. I definitely felt more confident when I was stuck on slippery, horrible off-camber slopes, turning the bike round in stupid places, and generally getting myself into the sort of trouble I seem to find myself every time I ride a bike. That improvement, that subtle change, is a really popular thing, and I think it's going to unlock the Tenere to more people and let more riders ride it harder places, which ultimately is the goal for all of us who enjoy taking big bikes off-road. Now on top of that, there's an updated dash, there's the Yamaha chip-controlled throttle, ride-by-wire. Yamaha's Tenere has always been very popular for being so basic. It's had ABS, it didn't have traction control, it had a cable throttle, and I think people have got a bit of a love for that. So it's quite brave of Yamaha to put the electronic throttle on there, but bear in mind it's got to get through Euro 5 plus, it's got to get through stricter and stricter regulations. I didn't want to lose any power, I'm sure no one out there wanted to lose any power out of the bike, so that's really why that throttle's there. What they've done is then use that technology to improve the idle, improve the low speed fueling, make it harder to stall it, and give you the option of a more aggressive or a softer throttle map depending on your riding, where you're riding and how you're feeling. The technology is there to get it through Euro 5 plus, but it's got some benefits to the rider as well, so I don't think it's a bad thing. And when was the last time you heard of a Yamaha ride-by-wire throttle letting down because it got muddy or wet? Stick it in the comments below and I hope they don't light up. The other obvious visual change is, of course, the new dash. It's got some stuff on it and it does things and you can connect your phone. Sure, great. What I'm more interested in is how it rides. We've been out here today in new terrain, rough terrain, big stones, quite harsh, rocky and unpredictable surfaces to ride on. Jumping between the rally version with the longer travel suspension and the new coated fork to make the front end plusher, and the standard one with the upgrades versus the old standard bike. Those two bikes were actually really impressive, and there was a notable difference between them, but I think the gap between the standard bike to a rally is now much smaller than it used to be from a standard bike to the Extreme before. Now if this is all gibberish because you're not a big Tenere fan and you don't know every model ever, I'll put it in simple terms. There's a basic Tenere with the low front mudguard that's got better suspension and is a super capable off-road bike. There's the rally one with the fancy paintwork and the high mudguard that makes you look like you're an absolute off-roading god, even if you're still only going to ride it to the chip shop or the coffee shop. The bigger one has more travel, better quality suspension, and the only time you notice that is when you start riding hard and charging stuff. If you're just plodding off-road, pick the one you like the look of. If you want to attack stuff and ride hard, pick the one with the fancy paintwork and the high front mudguard. Yeah, simple. Now this has been a first ride, a first impression. I've ridden some great fun trails, rocky loose stuff today, and my initial thoughts on the bike are it's definitely improved over the old one. I feel like there's a little bit more confidence in the front end. The seating position when you're riding off-road sat down is nicer, you feel further towards the front of the bike, and hopefully that's going to translate into a bit more of a fun, confidence-inspiring road ride. The new dash is great. My favourite feature on it is that now you can have a shortcut to turn your ABS and traction control off altogether, which if you've owned a Tenere and had the traction control or the ABS turn itself back on every 5 minutes, you'll know how much of a big win that is. So just to explain the new stay switchy offy ABS setup, you put the ABS settings in that you want, now whether that's front wheel only or ABS completely off and traction control off, and then when you turn the bike off and back on again, it does turn them back on. But all you do is you press the big ABS button and hold it, and that's a shortcut back to your previous settings. So rather than having to faff around going through the menus, it does it kind of for you, and then you've always got that one push. Right, so it doesn't do that while you're riding along. There you go. You've got to do it stationary. That's the deal. What remains now is to take one out in Wales and England and Portugal and Italy maybe, France, somewhere really nice. I think I need to do more miles is what I'm saying. Really good first impression, but this thing needs some proper abuse and I need to be stuck, sweating and crying before I can give you my full verdict on it. Stay tuned for that in the future.